everyone. You're watching Speak Your Mind with Dr. Ryger. I'm Neza Alawi, founder and CEO of Join Mayshad, the New York-based company that empowers women on a daily basis. I'm here with Dr. Risa Ryger, our clinical psychologist and investor in Mayshad, and our guest today is Alechia Reese, creative brand strategist, entrepreneur, and mother. Hello, Dr. Ryger.
Hi, Neza. How are you doing on this day that brings us such weather?
I know it's been an overwhelming week for everyone on the East Coast. So maybe, Dr. Ryger, we can start this episode by talking about something positive. Could you share a positive moment with us?
Absolutely. I was thinking about this before the show, and certainly one of the things that's important of having all different kinds of moments, serious moments and thoughtful moments. And what came to me was that on Saturday night, we were having dinner at home. We brought in lobsters that we were cooking, which is always a thing. My dog gets freaked out. And while we were doing this, we were FaceTiming with our daughter who's in Texas. And so we were having this just really fun, funny family moment, even though we were apart by thousands of miles. And that really did my soul good. And to be together and just be able to laugh with that ease that can happen. And so that was my time that comes to my mind. How about you? What can you share with us?
Thank you. Well, on my end, I literally crashed my daughter's weekend with their dad. They were supposed to go on a weekend away and then go with a full week with him in DC. And then I was like, okay, let me crash the weekend and then I'll get to have more time with them. And it ended up being such a joyful time with family and friends. So we went to Southampton, and it was a very positive moment. But what I like about what you're saying, it's really the fact that now we can connect with family members that are far away over moments where they're not physically present, and that is great. That's a great addition to having our life moving forward. So, Risa, what the fork? Today's show is about patience and emotional reserve. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how we ended up choosing this topic?
Sometimes you don't have to go into fiction. You don't have to create something. You don't have to imagine something. That life just provides it if we listen and remember. And so I was working with someone, and it came up that in this person's household, all of a sudden, out of the blue, someone in the household just went over the edge because there was a fork in the sink. And sometimes it was just, well, like, what is going on? What, the fork? What, the fork? And so it's like, how does this possibly make sense? It's like, I don't get it. This is such a nothing thing. But the deal goes kind of like this. And I thought it was just a fantastic story that's not specific to any person. It's specific to all of us, whether it's a fork, whether it's a knife, whether it's not a kitchen utensil, but that oftentimes there's that something. And it might be that really minor something that just throws us over the edge. And so what happens is that we can experience a lot of these, what I would call micro-stressors, really all through the day. And that oftentimes we're not aware of it. I mean, I'm wondering if you think for yourself of your what the fork moment.
Oh, totally. And in French, we call it that drop that spills over the vase. And so the vase is full and you have that drops that just pile up. And so, yes, every time that someone overreacts to a situation, it's never linked to that specific situation, but it's the sum of many micro stressors, as you're talking about, Dr. Ryger. Can you tell us a little bit more about how those micro stressors look and how they are impacting our lives in today's world.
Our micro-stressors are so varied. I mean, even today, as we're trying to put this show together, and we love to do this. So it's not about doing something that you don't want to do. It could absolutely be about doing something that you do want to do. And so here we are, we're trying to put together, and we know that we're going to have a great show for our audience because we're always so committed to it. And we have Alechia, our guest, who is in Florida, and she has her own weather there. And so we're trying to make this all work, and we're having our own difficulties with it. Now, this could be microstressors, right? And we may not even know it at the time, but these can be small deposits in our system where, well, we're trying it this way and that's not working, and we're trying it that way and that's not working. And so what can happen is that during the course of the day, or even if we carry over from the day before into the next day, that these micro stressors, if we're not aware of what's happening inside of us and we're not keeping track and we're not checking in, and what we're talking about is subtlety. We're not talking about going necessarily to go to our car and then all of a sudden we see that we have a flat tire and we just left exactly enough time to get to where it was that we were supposed to go. And now that's all off. But that there are these micro stressors of what we're experiencing now, of a Zoom not going through, or not, seeing someone and our initial impulse is to go and give them a hug, and we have to remember not to do that. Of thinking that we could, I don't know, create a dish for dinner that night, and all of a sudden realize that we don't have one of the ingredients, and it's just the supermarket at that point is going to be full of people and we're not sure about the social distancing. These would be some of the examples, as well as people who have their children at home who are not able to go to camp. And so there's the stressor of, well, I've just given them an activity and that's kept them for all of 12 minutes. And so now they're asking me for the next moment of what to do. That there are all these moments that can add up till till your fork moment. And so it's really important that we not devalue or not absolutely minimize what we're experiencing. I mean, nobody wants to lose it over a fork or over not having any more mayonnaise. But that if we need to sort of stay in touch with ourselves.
Yes, and especially in a couple, I think that being a couple is that junction of two lives mixing together. And so if that fork micro stressor is happening in the life of the other, and the other one has their own micro stressors, and then we meet at night. And so how can we let go of all that and make it that when we are not taking our own micro stress into the life of the other, and that I'm sure it takes a lot of self-awareness, but are there any tips or exercises that we can share with our audience?
Nessa, whenever there's a problem, we always work towards solution. And not only do we work towards solution, but we work towards solution that is actually implementable. And we have to keep this simple. Our lives are complicated. And so we need to be able to have tools and strategies and intervention that we can use immediately on the spot. Now, one of the things that I would suggest is, just as a function of routine, whether we're in COVID or whether we're not in COVID, that we need to be able to take a moment and check and see where we are in terms of our patience tank. Is our tank half full? Is our tank on empty? Are we in our reserve tank and we're really running on fumes? And so that becomes a very important way of staying in connection with ourselves. Now, that isn't just a function of, kind of thinking through our thoughts, but we also need to check in with our bodies. And we tend to, as human beings, we tend to really go with, what's going on in our heads. And our heads only give us so much information. Our heads provide one channel of communication, one channel of information, but we have other ways to check in. One of the most important ways is to also check in with our bodies. So don't just go through your head, go through your feelings, and go through your bodies. Check in, see where you are. Now, if you're seeing that you're in a good reserve situation, that you've got, you're pretty good, start to note for yourself where you need to start replenishing. Are you the person that can go, like what kind of car are you? Are you the person that goes, that can go 70 miles on a gallon? Or do you go through gas pretty quickly? And it's not that there's one way that's right and one way that's wrong, because we are not doing any kind of that shaming. It's just really understanding what your style is. And so if you need to replenish more frequently, do that. One of the ways of doing that, because I know you're going to ask me exactly what to do, that you can do it like this. You can do it anywhere that you are. So I'm going to give you two things that you can try. One is the breathe in, breathe out method. And so what I would suggest is not just, to take the deep breath and to let it out, but if you need more than that, give yourself more than that. So give yourself a kind of a mantra or a saying. So one thing that can work is on the inhale, go let, and on the exhale, it out. One thing to keep in mind is you want your exhale to be a little bit longer than your inhale. So whenever you're doing that, let it out. That's one way of doing it. It out will give you a little bit longer exhale. You can use that, try it, change it as you wish. That's one thing. The other thing is that if you're feeling stressed, and sometimes it's hard to go just to the breath, and we need to do something a little bit more physical that can connect us in with ourselves and also focus us. Because if we get focused, we can let go of a lot. So what I would suggest also is an exercise that I call the scrunch crunch, where you, and I will demonstrate right now, you take your arms next to you, you put your hands into fists, bring your shoulders up, scrunch everything together, take a breath in, exhale, and let it out. And so sometimes by exaggerating what we're experiencing, we experience more of a release, we let it go, and then we can move on from there. So those are two fast, easy strategies.
So much, Dr. Ryger, because they do work. And if I take my example, I'm someone who has worked a lot on my patience and my level of resilience. But then, even though I'm not the type of person to just blow up at someone because I will take it on me and I will, but it does affect my body. And so what you're telling me is immediately makes I realize that my body is tense because I did have my micro stressors throughout the day, but I didn't take the moment to release it. And so yes, it's very important to have those techniques with us in hand, to stop being impulsive to others in situations and overreacting, but also to not just let that stress get into our body and turn into a low immune system or diseases that we create. So what about the communication? As clinical psychologist, Dr. Ryger, I am sure that you preach for communication and talking. And so where does communication stand in releasing those micro-stressors?
Communication is essential, and communication can also start with yourself. So even if you don't have someone else to communicate with, by the way, when you're with you, you're not alone. And I think that's something important to remember, that when you're with you, you're with someone, you're with yourself. And so, one line of communication is what's going on in me? What am I feeling? Am I getting down on myself? Am I getting too hard on myself? Because not only do, when we have these micro stressors, can we let it out on other people, but we can also let it out in ourselves in terms of going into some negative talk or being harder on ourselves, expecting more of ourselves, and really just making it even more difficult. Succeeding is a great thing. I will not tell you that succeeding isn't great, depending, of course, within reason and what we're doing to ourselves, with ourselves, and how we're growing or not growing with it. But that we also need to bring kindness to ourselves. And so able to bring kindness to yourself and to let yourself off the hook, because we can only do one thing at a time. And so to expect perfection across the board is going to be just a place of self-deprecating. And we don't want to go that route. So one is the conversation that you have with yourself. And what can you do for yourself to help yourself at that time and get greater clarity? The other is having the conversations with other people, whether it's your partner, your spouse at home, your children, whatever that may be. And so being able to have a conversation and letting out, look, these are the parts that are working great. These are the parts that we need to try to make some changes with, or have this work better, or feel like we're more of a team on this. That those are communications that are also very important. And it doesn't have to be done in an angry way. That if you have belief in the people around you, that you can start that conversation not from a perspective, but from more of how do we make this better, and what can each of us do? How can we contribute to making this a better situation? And therefore, really bringing down the stress for everyone. Because one of the things that we know, Neza, is that there's something called emotional contagion, right? And so we can kind of catch negativity from one another. And so we also have to keep in mind and be mindful and bring awareness to what is the emotionality, what is the feel that we're bringing, and is this what we want other people to connect with? I mean, we're talking about, we have this virus that people are catching, and it's a contagion. It's contagious. But within our own lives, we can also share and have people catch from us positive things as well. And one doesn't rule out the other. If we have a positive time with people, it doesn't get wiped away by an altercation. It doesn't get wiped away. It doesn't get negated by something that is a sticking point, that they can stand, so that we don't have to be bereft. And we can go to the positive because the positive stands on its own, and we can go to what's problematic and not have it sink everything that happens.
I cannot more agree with you, Dr. Ryger, on everything that you're saying. And I also feel that this is a time where, with everything that is going on, where we should be helping others, and we're all going through massive stress. So what is our position towards helping other people in our life, where we feel that they're not as good as we are in growing that level of patience and that resilience? And these are good people that I'm referring to that are, but that go through challenges like each one of us. But then you find yourself facing the same challenge, but being more resilient to it, and giving it less space because you're more solution driven, and you want to help those other people that you're seeing, that can be friends or a companion or an associate, because you see them a little bit losing that patience with other people in their life, not yourself, and you want to help them be more patient. So what do you have to tell them?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand, well, what is the relationship, and have you developed a trusting relationship with that person? And it depends what level of intervention you're looking to. And when there's trust in a relationship, there's a lot more that you can communicate, because people will understand that it's coming from a place that is well intentioned, caring, and loving. And that is not always kind of where we need, where we are and who we're talking to. And so that's one thing. So that, also decide what's the best way, what's the way that we can phrase something so that that person can actually hear it. And there are some people who need the straight down the road, straight down the line kind of communication. And there are other people who are not going to hear that. So if there's something that you want to get through to someone, think through, what is your purpose? Is your purpose to help them and help them kind of come to some realization about a change? Or is your purpose just to let something out for yourself? And then your communication will change with that. The other thing is that it's important to keep in mind what your expectation is. And so even though you're giving someone great advice, and maybe you're giving it to them even in the way that they can hear it, it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do it and turn on a dime. And so that if we have an expectation, well, I'm going to tell this person, to please, stop doing this, or could you try doing this in a different way, that they're not necessarily just going to pick it up and run with it and be able to implement it. And so for us ourselves to be able to stay more regulated for ourselves, we also need to get clarity about what our expectations are. Now, with coworkers, with people that we're in business with, I mean, there's also different kinds of communication that we need to have. Of, you gave me an email at 10 o'clock at night that could have gotten to me earlier on. And I'd appreciate it if I can do the best job that I can, that I'd get that earlier on. I mean, there are all different levels and all different ways that we need, and we try to help shape or inform other people to let them know the impact that they're having.
And I think the biggest stress factor is, when you're giving this specific example, is that we're codependent on each other. No one can be totally independently successful without having to depend on the success factor of another one that brings that piece to their mission. So yes, as an entrepreneur, you do learn a lot of patience, because your own ideas and ambitions depend massively on everyone that is going to be able to succeed that piece. And so I don't think that an entrepreneur can be successful if they don't have that extreme patience. And if they do, that means that they've had a lot of nice people that have been, taking on that stress around them, but definitely it wouldn't make them great leaders. So talking about entrepreneurship, we're going to introduce our guest today. Alechia is the author of Eating Elephants. Alechia, you'll tell us more about it. Founder of RGLP Group and the chief brand strategist of 360 Getaway Brands. Welcome, Alechia. And
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I always like to add the fact that you are a single mom, raising a beautiful daughter, and on top of it, you're an entrepreneur, and you're always in that team spirit. You'll always bring other people with you whenever you have a beautiful mission that rises for you. So can you tell us, as you were hearing us, what came up for you as you're hearing about what the fork situation, and the values of patience?
The biggest thing for me was identifying those micro, those micro things leading up to your what the fork moment. Especially identifying, like, like which type are you? Do you run out of gas quickly? Gas, aka energy. Do you need to refill quickly? So, because I feel like the moment you know and you're able to identify what your stresses are, what and when you feel, most energized, then you're able to manage your energy, because managing your energy is how, for me, how you're able to truly move forward and not be so exhausted, stressed, and frustrated when you get there.
Yes. So, Alechia, I'll repeat a little bit to make sure that everyone hears. And so, yes. So you're referring about your energy level, and how much can you work on that energy? And yes, I love that image, because I say that we walk into a relationship with with like a bottle full of water, which is that energy, and the how many compromises you can make within that relationship, and one day, you just find that it's empty, and you find yourself overreacting to something, and you're like, okay, I'm done. But it's really that the whole patients have been used, but on your own energy as well. Every day when we wake up, we need to refill that energy, because those micro stressors do empty us from the energy, and that's when we become weak, and can just feel saturated. Can you tell us a little bit more on your personal journey, and how you have been working on being at the forefront of the different hats in your life, as a mother, as an entrepreneur, and also as a leader and advocate?
So one of the biggest things for me, because it was never my plan to be a single mom. So one of the biggest things for me, when I realized, okay, I can't stay in the abusive marriage that I'm in, I will have to, make a choice in order to save my life. I decided I was going to get to know myself really, really well. I had grown up in a very traumatic situation, dealing with a number of just, things that children just shouldn't experience and shouldn't know, from poverty to, sexual abuse in and around the church and religion that I was in. So just like lots and lots of traumas. And so for me, when I decided that, okay, I'm going to leave this marriage, I promised myself that I am going to become the absolute best version of myself. But the only way to figure out who the best version of myself is to figure out who I am first. Because I didn't know who I was. I knew what I did. I knew some of the things I was okay at. But I didn't know who Alechia was at her core. So for me, it was first identifying, what do I want my life to feel like? What do I want it to feel like? What do I want my experiences to be? And then what legacy do I leave behind? And then from there, I started realizing with all the things that, because I'm a high functioning person. It used to be high functioning depression, but I started to deal with the depression part of it. And now I'm just very high functioning. So for me, it's okay, how do I not put that pressure on others that I work with, because I wear so many hats? How do I utilize my empathy and also my emotional intelligence to get the most out of those who I'm working with? So for me, it was identifying where all of my triggers, so that I could deal with it, because that was the root issue. But deal with all these triggers, lots of years of therapy. I'm a strong proponent of them. And then beyond just the therapy, doing like that personal work and then starting one thing at a time. Yes, I do a lot now, but I didn't start off doing a lot. I started off doing one thing, which was a nonprofit for foster youth who were aging out of foster care. Then I kept learning additional skills through working with my nonprofit organization. And then I started learning more skills and then, figuring out, just allowing myself to grow. And for me, in allowing myself and requiring of myself that I'm growing on a consistent basis, have learned how to manage. When I know I'm at the point where I'm so stressed that I can't function, or if I know like, okay, continuing this action is going to lead to that, I'll pause. Let's take some stuff off. Let's delegate. Let's take a break, and we'll come back. So for me, that's kind of where it started.
So, Alechia, first of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing and letting us know about your experience, and that you had the strength and the courage to see where you were and to get some help for your depression. And that it is, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate your sharing that with our audience, in that people often confuse seeking help with not being able to just do it themselves, as if that's the goal of everything. And that in the reality, that it takes a lot of courage, conviction, and optimism that things can get better. So I'm going to ask the question about the elephant in the room, and which is, the great expression. And I would love to know how you named your book. I know I'm shifting a little bit, and Neza may bring us back to another space afterwards, but could you share that with us, please?
Absolutely. So, eating elephants, funny enough, I wrote the entire book on my cell phone. I'm a micro consumer because I do so much in a day. When I read books, I've always had to, in order to finish them, read them in bite-sized pieces because they were usually a bit longer. At least the types of books I like to read are usually a bit longer. So I told myself, you know what, one day I'm going to write a book that's going to be for people who are like me and that they don't have, a whole lot of time to sit and read a book, but they really do want the information that you get from the book. I said, okay, I'm going to write micro-sized books. And I still only write micro-sized books. But I wrote it on my cell phone. It took, I believe it was about a month. The timelines are hazy now. Time tends to, come and go. But no, so for me, I wanted to show people, I don't care how big your goals are, how expensive your dreams are. It's not about that. How you actually achieve those is by eating it a bite at a time, taking it section by section. If you need to run, 26 miles, you start with what? You start with mile number 1. But most people, because they're looking at the entire 26-mile run that they have to run, they sometimes get really, really discouraged. So eating elephants, I go through parts of my story, talking about where I had come from, the some of the really, really painful and even damaging experiences that I had gone through, how working through those, taking it literally a bite at a time, I was able to get to the point to where, success is defined, it is very subjective. It's dependent on each and every person. But what is it for me? Again, drilling down to what do I want my life to look like? And so I had bartered with my COO at the time when I was working in corporate America to train me as a project manager. And he agreed to do so. And in him training me as a project manager, I learned a lot of the principles of project management and that this is how you get things done. And it was the start for me into being able to start something and finish. Not just stopping them because things get hard, but identifying risks, being able to mitigate those risks. And so the book, it sounds really long-winded, but I promise it's not. But the book goes through that and shows the readers exactly how to do the same thing, applying it to their life. And it's super interactive. There's spaces in there to write, the whole 9 yards.
Thank you, Alechia. Dr. Ryger, it was a great question. We wanted to get there. Alechia, the empowerment concept that we definitely all need to have in our life, and society still needs it a lot, women. And what do you think? What do you think about that? Where does it stand now as a word? Because it's been a little bit too much used and overused. Where do you think that the empowerment needs to be exactly now in time, and how can it be?
Wait, so for me, here's my stance on empowerment. And it's no disrespect to anyone else, but my stance on empowerment is it's incomplete without also adding an equipment piece. And what I mean by that is empowerment is like filling someone's well-able car with gas, taking away their cell phone, their GPS, and their map. So yes, it is absolutely great that they're empowered, but you also need to round it out by equipping them with the tools that they need. So yes, empower them, but then equip them. So it's not only do you have gas, but you also have a roadmap to get to where you want. And here's the thing too about roadmaps. You don't have to take just one highway. You can take an avenue, you can take a boulevard, you can take the highway, you can take the low roads. You have options. But it's important that you don't just go somewhere and you're rah, but that after we rile you up, that we provide you with, okay, and now with all that energy, with all of, those good feelings that you're feeling, now this is how you execute. This is how you implement. It's not enough to have empowerment. You will not also include equipment.
Thank you. Dr. Ryger, any question for Alechia?
Yes. Alechia, you're such a fascinating person. There's a million questions. But the question that I would like to ask you to give you the widest berth, which is that of the questions that we haven't asked you, what is the question that you wish that we had, and could you answer that one?
You guys have been pretty good with the asking of questions. I guess the main question would be, once you've identified, because patience, it literally touches on every aspect of your life in terms of how you're able to function with your family, how you're able to function with your friends, and then also how you're able to function professionally. So it would be after you've identified your triggers or what your micro-stressors are, what next? And then if I had to answer that question, again, I am a very practical person. I like, steps and processes. Although I'm creative, I'm also very practical. And so for me to answer that question, and I'm by no way, I'm not a doctor, so, fact check me, check with your professionals. But for me, what has always worked is after I've identified what those are, I manage my energy by putting them on a scale. -2 are things that, you'd have to shoot me to try and get it done. And then, +2 would be the things that I would do if you never, ever paid me to do them. And so I would do those -2s if I absolutely had to do them, but I hated doing them. I would do those either right after I've experienced really, really high moments. And by high moments, I mean like accomplishing a task or getting off of a really great Zoom call or just finishing at the gym because I have a lot of, really great, energy flowing through me. So for me, it's identifying after I know what those micro stressors are, create a path or a plan that would allow me to not only mitigate them, but to, okay, this is starting to happen. Let me remove myself from it. And then to manage my energy best, identify where those things lie on the spectrum for me, because I do believe that everything is a spectrum. So identify where those things lie on the spectrum for me, and then adjust my implementation based on where on the spectrum they are for me.
I like that, the reorganization of things. Importantly, identifying the triggers, identifying also the positive emotional situations that triggers your ups as well. For me, an example of that has been working out, for instance. I mean, not, yeah, just either being at a gym with some great music and getting some endorphins out, and or going hiking and being close to nature, but taking enough time to distance myself from any situation, and having that routine that if really things are filling up to the fork level, uh, to know that facing the situation right away is not the smartest thing, and sometimes taking that 1 hour to 2 hours of rest, which is, it's also a distance from the situation, then we have more clarity. Alechia, it was a pleasure to have you today with us. Thank you so much for joining us, even though the technical difficulty, but we really wanted to keep you with us. Even if you elegantly gave us the option to just not be on the episode, to not damage the quality of the episode, but having you on the episode just gives more richness and quality to our content. Thank you, Alechia. Dr. Ryger, do you want to leave our audience with the word on patience and the importance of patience?
Yes. So today, and we've gotten a lot of great information, and we thank Alechia for her continuum, right? And she talks about the spectrum and her continuum and how she navigates that, which is, certainly something that we can all implement. And no matter where you are, you can always take your breath. Do have your own mantra of, you let on the in breath and it out on the out breath. Check your patience, tank, and see where you are in it, and know how you run, whether you run high, whether you run low, how quickly your tank comes down or rises up, so that you can navigate for yourself. And also, any questions, please feel free to contact me at Dr. R at expertinchange.com, and I have free resource for you about change and making change easier. And remember, we are thrilled to have you here with us today. You are a part of our community, and that we always have a seat saved for you.